Hi, friends. I'm back with another interview for you. This time I'm switching gears a little bit. I'm going to be spotlighting a podcast that just launched at the end of May called The Defendants. The Defendants is a series created, hosted, and executive produced by Jane Aster Roe. And the goal of this podcast is to help raise awareness and deepen public understanding around sexual assault or sexual violence from the very public to the private. It is going to unpack why conviction rates remain chronically and systemically low, while giving us a chance to think about the topic in potentially new ways and hopefully help to bring about meaningful change. To learn more about the Defendants podcast, I will be speaking with Jane Aster Roe. As you've heard, she is the host and producer of this podcast. She is an award-winning multimedia writer and storyteller based here in Toronto, Canada. She's also the founder and CEO of Aster Roe Productions. And through her work, she strives to tell unknown stories and tell familiar stories through a new lens. So, to learn more about the behind the scenes of the Defendants podcast and more about the podcast series itself, I leave you with my conversation with Jane Aster Roe. Hi, friends. I'm back in this virtual room with Jane Aster Roe. Jane, lovely to be with you here.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm happy to speak with you. We're going to be speaking about a new project that you just launched, a podcast. But you're a multimedia person. You're a writer, producer, storyteller. We're both here in Toronto, Canada. But for folks who maybe are not familiar with you specifically, tell us a little bit about your foray into storytelling in this multimedia space and what is it about this that kind of draws you in?
Oh, interesting. I haven't been asked that before. So I guess I've always been like really drawn to storytelling. Like I think I've been a writer since I could write. I just telling stories and is how I make sense of the world, and writing stories is how I make sense of the world. I think I used to say that I was made up of metaphors. Is that was kind of like the best way that I knew how to understand and make sense of everything that was happening around me and that was happening to me. And so I've always been really like a storyteller and interested in stories. And so that means stories like in all forms and
Yes.
however they, and which is why I'm sort of a multimedia person.
Mhm.
Kind of the ethos of my production company is that we find like what medium is going to best serve the story.
I
So
see.
whether that's a podcast or a scripted series on TV, or a documentary, or like prose, like just written down.
Mhm.
We want to find like we have what the story is, and then we figure out what's going to be best serve it. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where that is. So I kind of go into all kinds of different ways of telling story.
Thank you for sharing that. Because it's interesting you wear many hats, as you just explained. You're also a producer, not only a writer or a storyteller. So you're now you have multiple things on the go, but one of your latest works is the Defendants podcast. And thank you for doing the work. It really is focusing on sexual violence and sexual assault, and you just launched at the end of May. And I kind of want to maybe, I know where it came from for you, but for those who haven't listened to the first couple of episodes, I want to understand the impetus for telling this story as a podcast, and what makes sense for you to do for you to do it this way.
Yeah. Um, so for me, this story made most sense as a podcast because, first of all, podcasts I think are very intimate for a listener. Like it's a very intimate listener experience. And because the topic is so heavy, or it can be a very heavy topic, I think with the show, we try to not make it too heavy. We try to make it as accessible as possible, but it is still a like
Yes.
heavy topic, no matter how we approach it. Like that can't be avoided. And so um, being able to have the intimacy of just like headphones and you can kind of be wherever you want
Mhm.
when you're listening to the podcast, I think that kind of helps allow people to delve into it and listen to it in their own way.
Mhm.
The other thing that was really important for it being audio is that we can we could interview we interviewed a lot of survivors for the
Sure.
purpose of the show.
Mhm.
And it is much easier for survivors to speak just with the recording of their voice
Mhm.
as opposed to having to be on camera. It's also a lot easier for us to anonymize. Whoop, sorry,
That's
don't know
great.
if I said that
You
right,
did.
but it's a lot easier for us to anonymize their story
Mhm.
um, because with just audio, like we can really easily have a voice actor just read back their transcript.
That's right.
So it makes it a lot easier, even just for those privacy reasons. So on a practical side, just doing the podcast made a lot of sense. And then also there's that added bonus of I think it's a really nice experience. And it's a nice way for somebody to be able to access media that makes them think, which I think the goal of this is to hopefully make you think. And
Yes.
so I think, you know, we want to basically take your hand and like ask you to think about what the justice system is providing right now.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the podcast and audio in your ear is just a really gentle way to do that.
I appreciate you saying that too, because not all of us also have maybe the bandwidth, which is like a word we throw around often about, reading online or even on paper. Like, I feel like a lot of us are multimedia people, and I think to your point, we consume information differently these days. And
Mhm.
I do appreciate the length of the episodes that you released in terms of, the content of it and raising awareness, of course, but the thoughtfulness that's going into kind of making us understand the stories and the different guests that you're going to have. So, in planning for the podcast, and can you share a little bit about the reaching out, as you mentioned, to survivors and other guests that you're going to have on the show?
Yeah, so this project is the culmination of 2 years of
Mhm.
work. Um, we it we basically started with I guess we started with the structure of um, basically going back and like research, going through like, okay, what is the process step by step? Like, how does a case go all the way through? And then we tried to, and when I say we, I mean myself and the like producers who were
Yeah.
working on writing it with me. Um, and so we said, okay, how does the case go step by step and what are the challenges? And then we wanted to basically fill in the gaps.
Mhm.
And so we looked to experts first so that we could try to get, okay, like so Dr. Elaine Craig is somebody who we spoke to very early on so that
Mhm.
we could try to get like a really clear understanding of like what she and what people in the field think are missing. We also looked at a ton of books and media. Our show notes are incredibly detailed because they list kind of
Mhm.
all the sources that we used. And then we wanted to hear people's stories
Yes.
and how people had experienced the system. So we did that in a couple ways. The first way was that we did just a general call out for if anybody had a story that they wanted to share, for them to reach out for us. And then beyond that, we actually hired an outreach coordinator.
Mhm.
And basically, she was amazing. I don't even, I'm mystified by how she was able to
Mhm.
find so many amazing people who came and told their stories. But she basically really helped to um, connect us with a lot of people from all kind of walks and stages of life who'd had lots of different experiences, who then we sat down with and we had these very, very long interviews. In the episodes, you hear like very short snippets from people, but we spoke to people for pretty much an hour and a half each,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't even necessarily, beyond having things that we could put in the episodes, we also wanted to learn from people so
Sure.
that they could inform the writing of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, like there are some conversations that we might, that we hopefully will be able to release as like longer bonus
Mm-hmm.
conversations down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I would assume there's also a lot of, you mentioned the learning that goes along with each episode for you, but also for us as audience members. So thank you for
Mhm.
the extra work and the
Mhm.
extra notes too, and the episode notes. Because there's a lot of legalese too when you're starting to unpack the justice system. And, I understand that part of also creating this platform, the podcast, is to challenge the system and things in terms of what's working, what's not working. I think on your production site, you have like a graphic that says, why is sexual assault the only crime where victims are scrutinized as if they were the guilty party? And I think that is quite the summary of all of us who, have heard about this. That is the constant message that we keep seeing, that somehow the person who's had to live through this has to be re-traumatized each
Yeah.
time, right?
Well, that's
So,
also that's where the name comes from, right? Like the show's called The Defendants, which
mhm,
is sort of like a name that's like baked in an irony,
yes,
because we're not actually, when we say the defendants, we're not talking about the people who have been accused of the
the
crime.
perpetrators. Mhm,
We're not talking about the perpetrators. We're referring to the people who the crime has happened to. We're talking about the fact that they have to defend themselves. The act of saying this happened to me, they immediately get put on their back foot and have to defend the fact that they've said that a crime has happened to them.
mhm.
It's really a crime where victims become the defendants of the crime that has been committed against them.
Yes, and I think it's sort of like this thing that we've all sort of have known or have experienced sexual violence or sexual assault. It's not gender based, and I know that that is something that you also want to get across, that it impacts everybody, but also the people that we know as well, who are our supporters and care folks. So the statistics are there, but somehow there's this lag in how the justice system deals with it. So is the hope that to get us more activated to have these discussions, we have rights like voting. What is sort of one of the bigger impacts that you hope the defendants podcast will have on kind of the bigger audience?
Yeah. So the whole idea behind the series is that I think a lot of people, like you said, sort of know very, even just peripherally, that this is something that isn't working here.
Hmm.
Like, especially even just in the past few months, we've had so many news stories about this crime and how it goes in court and how it doesn't work out favorably for the victim. Um, and so I think there are so many, a lot of people know, but I think that they don't understand why. They don't know why it is that it
Hmm.
doesn't work. And the kind of goal of the series is that we want people to understand why it doesn't work, uh, which is why it's meant to be like very like, let me take your hand and walk you through exactly why it doesn't work, and be sort of very accessible in that way. Um, and it's meant to be that way because I really think that the first step is knowledge. I think that we all need to have knowledge of what it is that we need to change. Like we all need to know where we are now
Yes.
in order to be able to um, actually have productive conversations about where we would like to be. Because if we don't know what the system is now, and if we don't have a full understanding of why it is the way it is and what is happening right now, then we can't have those full conversations about imagining what systems we want for the
Right.
future. So that's sort of the goal of it, is to say this is what it is now, and then sort of as we get towards the end, we start of the series, we start to say, okay, now that we know how it is now, now we can start to say, okay, what could we imagine as a better system, and what
Yes.
conversations could we start to have?
And I think that's important. And I also appreciate that you're taking us along. So if I hadn't made it clear, you are the host that's sort of
Mm-hmm.
taking our hand along
Mm-hmm.
each episode. Was that something that you knew from the get-go that you would be taking on this role?
I'm trying to think back. I think I was like, I think I said, well, I don't have to be the host. And then everybody was like, no, you're going to be the host. I think that's what happened.
One of those things.
I said, well, I don't have to. I, I think we always knew that, probably we would use personal anecdotes from me to
Mhm.
help guide the audience through the journey, and to
Right.
help ground the audience. Um, but I think, which I also think is also why early on it was like, well, also it would just make sense, like you should host it, and be the person who's
So your experience with the justice system as well. So it's sort of
mhm.
like I understand why too, because the personal always kind of gravitates to each of us, right? We
Yeah,
are
it's
able to
very
relate.
helpful. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
helpful from a storytelling
Mhm.
perspective to
Yeah,
have that
for sure.
personal connection. Yeah.
I wanna mention that you do have a couple of episodes released. Any
Hmm.
feedback you've received so far from folks? And
Yeah,
I'm always curious.
I've received really lovely feedback from lots of people. Um, people are really interested, I think, so far, and they're really engaged, which is lovely to hear. And I think especially people were really interested in the second episode, which was about called "You Have the Right to an Attorney." And I got some people who were really, really interested in the way that that episode sort of breaks down um, why it is that a victim ends up not having legal representation in
Mm.
those cases, and
Mhm.
sort of goes through the nuances of victims' rights, and rights for those who've been accused of crimes,
Yes.
and sort of why we have those rights. And it kind of asks how we can marry them, as opposed to holding them so
Right.
separately and prioritizing one or the other. And I had a lot of people who came back and appreciated the fact that um, the show isn't advocating that we just get rid of rights for accused individuals,
Right.
because
Hmm.
that is not practical, and that also is not something we absolutely should not do that, because we need you still need to have we need to have rights for people who are accused of crime. That's very important. We can't just live in a society where we don't have where you
Any
can just
rights.
throw somebody in jail.
Hmm.
That's not okay. The
Right.
issue is that the people who are the victims right now don't have real any enforceable rights. And so what it is that we want to figure out a way to hold them both
Right.
as
Uh-huh.
important. So I had a lot of people who responded to that, and I had a couple lawyers who were interested in that. So
Mhm.
yeah.
That's great to hear. And I'm glad I asked because it's now making me think about how tools like podcasts like yours, this defendant one, is there may be potential for education. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would be curious to see what if that is something that you've considered or, how this could become a tool in even like legal education.
Yeah, for sure. We had some of the experts that we spoke to, they're based in universities, and they have sort of expressed interest in using the show in their classes, which is really cool. That's
Very
really
cool.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So I don't think I have it clear in my mind. How many episodes total is the series?
So there's 6 episodes,
Okay.
and they come out weekly. So the third episode is going to be out tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Just want to make sure folks know that there are 6 episodes and they are
Hmm.
coming.
Hmm.
So there's lots for us to think about and talk about. I think there's also, I'm glad that you have a website for the podcast as well. So I'll make sure that it's in the description so folks know where to go. At the end of the day, this is always a conversation starter. So I'm hoping that fi- would you maybe keep us posted on the website of any kind of longer releases? I'm kind
Yeah,
of
so
curious.
we're planning to so these 6 episodes are the first half.
Mhm,
Um, the second half we would love to do as an exploration. Like these first 6, as I said, are meant to be the foundation so that we all have this baseline, we can all have a baseline understanding of what the system is now.
mhm.
Um, our plan is for the next 6 to be okay, so where do we actually want the system to go?
I
And to be able
see.
to explore that. And then in the meantime, we're also planning to keep it going with sort of those bonus interviews that we've been doing. We have lots more content. So really what we want to do is we think it's just really important that people are having the conversations, and
Yes.
we want the defendants as a sort of as a project to be sort of like you said, a facilitator of conversation.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. I'm
Mhm.
glad to learn something new here about the continuation of the series. So we know now to
Mhm.
stay tuned.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Jane. I appreciate your time and
thank you.
look forward to hearing more stories.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you.